Welcome back to this master class in hematology after a break of Diwali vacation. And today we are having an eminent speaker, Dr. Colonel Deepak Kumar Mishra, who is a senior consultant and hematopathologist at Tata Medical Center, Kolkata, which is a very renowned cancer medical center of the country and headed by Dr. Meman Chandi. And Dr. Deepak Kumar Mishra is a senior hematopathologist and having experience of more than 20 years in the field. He is master in flow cytometry and all other hematological lab investigations. So without wasting much time, I will tell Deepak Mishra to start his lecture on CBC.
Yes. Is my screen?
No, still not. Yeah, it's visible.
Yes. So very good evening to everyone and everybody, all my friends in Ahmedabad. Thank you, Sandeep, Parimal, and everyone for organizing this and inviting me here to talk to you for half an hour to 45 minutes. I'm given to understand it's a single lecture session and you are having it for the past almost 8 fortnights. And when Sanket spoke to me, I said, let the topic be of a very general nature so that it will be of interest to non-pathologists. So the topic is CBC, or complete blood count in the physician's lexicon. As you know that as the technology of blood cell counting is gradually evolving year after year, it is becoming a point of care machine which is adorning the clinics of many physicians, and they just count the blood cell counts in their clinics and start treating the patient. But there are certain nuances to it, which is very important for the physicians to understand and to make use of it. So this talk is basically to orient them to what exactly the current generation of flow cytometer is, current generation of blood cell counters can give. I bring greetings from my hospital. This is a picture which has been taken on a rainy season. So you can see that this is the phase 1 of the building and behind it is phase 2. Now we are a 435 bedded cancer center in Calcutta. So I have been in this institution for the last almost 11 and a half years. And I have seen 3 generations of blood cell counters. All of them are from the Beckman-Coulter range. I started with the LH750-780 platform of Beckman, then graduated to DXH800, and now I have the DXH900. So I'll tell you exactly how things have moved. This is the DXH800, and this is the DXH900, which has an attachment of a cellular vision platform as part of digital hematology. So no talk on blood cell counting is complete without paying tribute to this great man. He's an electrical engineer by profession, Wallace Coulter and his brother, who used to work in their garage trying to develop good quality paints. And when they were developing the good quality paints, they wanted to calculate the paint particles in the paint to make it better. Because the US Navy gave them a project and asked them to see that the paint that the ships are given lasts longer. So they were trying to develop some paint which would have given a longer lasting paint to the US naval ships. So this is the exact publication that appeared in their name, and this is the primitive blood cell counter that it has. You have beakers and you have some electrical circuitry, and all that is history now. And Coulter principle is now the bread and butter of blood cell counting. Even though it is any counter, the principle is called Coulter principle. So this is the first Coulter counter that they devised to count the cells. So this is the counting technology or the Coulter principle. As the cells pass through the oscilloscope or pass through the flow cell, and it passes through an electrical field, an impulse is generated, and this oscilloscope records it. That was RBCs, and this is WBC. The difference is that that calculates the volume, and this calculates the volume as well as the internal characteristics of the WBC. So white cells have got both characteristics. It has volume and it has a cytoplasmic content. So coming to the Coulter range of counters, I have no conflict of interest to declare because I'm presenting Coulter counters. I'm just showing it to you because I'm using it. Before joining this institution, all along I used Sysmex counters. So I have used varieties of counters during my nearly 30 years of pathology practice. So here you have the volume conductivity scatter technology to analyze the WBC cell population, and it has a panel of 24 complementary indices. And by that, it segregates the different type of WBCs, the RBCs, and the platelets, which I'll come to that in the subsequent slides. So because of the better abnormality detection or better abnormal cell detection, you can differentiate all these different 9 varieties of different WBCs in a blood cell counter. All these are the scatter plot on the screen, and you can find that they're right from monoblast to giant platelets. So they are all possible because of the advanced ledgers that are currently used to capture the different characteristics, the volume, the conductivity pattern, and the scatter on these graphs. So this is a screenshot of one of the cases in which you can see that on the below you have the volume, conductivity, scatter parameters, and based on that you have the differential counting data which is generated. So this is neutrophil, lymphocyte, and monocyte VCS parameters, the mean and the standard deviation. So when you look at the WBC cell population data in a patient of acute promyelocytic leukemia, where you can see that these 2 promyelocytes are there, which are abnormal promyelocytes, you can find that based on the VCS parameters, it can suggest that possibly what you are seeing is a high volume neutrophilic cell, and it could possibly be acute promyelocytic leukemia, which of course you have to confirm it under the microscope and by cytogenetics before you start your treatment. But machines are getting smarter and smarter, and they are giving you a lot more information that the previous generation of counters were giving you. So similarly, you can find that the normal neutrophil, a dysplastic neutrophil, all of these can be picked up by the current generation of counters. There are some parameters which are established parameters, and there are some parameters which are research use only parameters, and you can use them after the validation exercises in your laboratories. So these are the scatter plots of granulocytes, abnormal granulocytes, and normal sample, and all these immature granulocyte with myeloid dysplasia, immature granulocyte without myeloid dysplasia have different volume, conductivity, and scatter properties, which can be analyzed by the Beckman-Coulter series of counters. So this is a peripheral smear of a patient of chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and this is the VCS, and this is the scatter plot that you get. All these are lymphocytes, and these are the volumes of neutrophils, lymphocytes, and monocytes that you are going to get. So nucleated red cells are very important in the practice of hematology. You need to look at nucleated red cells in the peripheral blood. You want to see them under the microscope. You need to count it, and you need to correct your WBC count based on the presence of nucleated red blood cells. Today, all current generation of counters will do that. They will count the WBCs, they will make a correction based on the presence of nucleated RBCs, and they will give you a brilliant histogram, which could be three-dimensional as well. This will rotate in your screen, and you can get a feel of exactly where does this cell lies in the scatter plot. So NRBCs have a characteristic signature position in the scatter plot, and you can see them in this red dots. So all those who are getting familiar, physicians are looking at it day in and day out these days, because it is just behind them, behind their chair. They just put the thing into the machine and they have these on their screens. So other thing is important is that WBC research population data has made it possible for detection of parasitized RBCs. So it will not differentiate between vivax and falciparum, but it will say that there are presence of parasitized RBCs. This is red dots here at the bottom of this scatter plot are nothing but parasitized RBCs. You can see there is a Plasmodium species lying inside, and it can be picked up by this scatter plot. So the detection of or the diagnosis of malaria has become simpler. Just by the first count of the blood cell or the blood, you can suspect malaria. And then you do the immunochromatographic test, the strip test to differentiate and detect the different species of Plasmodium. So the diagnosis and treatment of malaria has become faster, precise, and definitive in the current practice by physicians. So whatever you may say, you may have the smartest of counters, but there are cases and slides which has to be seen under the microscope before you say that it is there are abnormalities in the WBCs and the RBCs and in the platelets. So you have to use the microscope to validate many of the abnormalities. And when I talk about the abnormalities, they are actually flagged abnormalities, which are given by your cell counters in the printout that you take in terms of flags. I'll come to that in subsequent slides. So currently, because of the digital hematology, we can have the localization of abnormal cells by image capture. So you have to put the stained slide into the digital hematology platform, the CellaVision. It has different models. We have one of them, and it is giving beautiful results. Like today, we had a patient of post-transplant TTP, and we just had very few fragmented RBCs. The LDH was borderline, and we just put it into the CellaVision, and we got about 3 to 4 fragmented RBCs per high power field in the digital hematology platform. So detection, and it highlighted when we clicked cystocytes, it highlighted all cystocytes in the field. So wonderful technology that is coming, and more labs are going to have the digital hematology platforms. So this is one of such. You can see that large number of spherocytes are here. A lot of the RBC and isocytosis. So it can detect all these RBC abnormalities by the click of a button, field after field. So objectivity of analysis becomes better and better. So when a physician comes to the blood cell counts, he looks at the RBCs, he looks at the WBCs, and he looks at the platelets. When you talk about the RBCs, you start with hemoglobin, the total RBC count. And when you look at the RBCs, you look at their volume, the hematocrit, the mean corpuscular hemoglobin, the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. Some of them are direct measurements and some of them are calculated parameters. RDW has become very precise because large number of red blood cells get analyzed to give you a correct estimation of the degree of anisocytosis. The machine will give you flag 1+, 2+, 3+, because of the total number of or the degree of anisocytosis that the machine will identify. Similarly, the reticulocyte count has become more definitive by the VCS technology. The fluorescence is very bright and it can detect the different maturing stages of reticulocyte in a much better way. So you can have IRFs, you can have high fluorescence, you can have medium fluorescence, and you can have low fluorescence reticulocytes. I will show you subsequently what it is. Normal values, I am not going into the details. You know what are the normal values of these red cell indices which you use. So the thing is that if there is an abnormality and you have set the discriminating function of the machine, it will flag, yes, MCV is abnormal. MCH is low, RDW is high. So machine is going to speak to you the abnormality. So now the newer generation of blood cell counters have come with many newer parameters. So I'll just make you familiar with certain of these newer parameters, like you have the percentage of hypochromic red cells. You can find out what percentage of red cells that you have in the smear are hypochromic. You can locate the fragmented RBCs I just spoke about, the cystocytes, the nucleated red blood cells that can be better counted by the machine. Similarly, in the WBC positional parameters, you have the malaria parasite, and you can have the immature granulocytes, which have all given important parameters for the treatment by the physicians. So reticulocyte hemoglobin content is very important for the diagnosis of different categories of anemias. The immature reticulocyte fraction is important in post-transplant engraftments, and the reticulocyte volume is also important in cases of anemias who are improving to treatment. Similarly, when the season is of dengue, we always look at the immature platelet fraction, the mean platelet volume, and the platelet distribution width. Now, most of the recent generation of blood cell counters are giving all these parameters in their printouts. So VCS, I will not go into more detail. It is volume, conductivity, and light scatter. And it sizes of the cell, it tells you the internal characteristics of a WBC, and also it tells you the cell surface characteristics and cell granularity of the WBCs by these techniques. So I'll come to the reticulocyte parameters, which are very important. We have certain utilized parameters and certain research use only parameters. As I said, that these research use only parameters can be validated in your lab and can be utilized for clinical care. So in addition to the retic count, the absolute retic count, the immature retic fraction, and the mean reticulocyte volume, you can have the differentiation of the reticulocytes in terms of highly mature retics, immature retics, and the middle level retics based on the presence of the fine RNA strands that you find inside the reticulocytes. And you also have the red cell size factor, which can be estimated by the retic mode. So I'll not go into the definition of what the reticulocyte is. Everyone knows that. And everybody knows that there are almost 4 different types of reticulocytes. And as they mature, they lose the RNA and gradually become a stage 4 reticulocyte to mature erythrocyte. And when you talk about reticulocyte parameters, the modern blood cell counters can give all these parameters in your printout, and you can select which one you want in your hospital and can get flags depending on the normal values, reference values that you set in as low critical value and high critical value, and it will give you high, low parameters of these different retic parameters. So retic count is actually the total number of reticulocytes upon the total number of red cells. So this is a calculated parameter, the percentage, and the total absolute retic count you have to multiply by the volume of the RBCs. So I will not go into the details of the reference values. And when you have counters, you also have inaccurate reticulocyte counts because of many interferences. Many times your RBCs have inclusions like Haul-Jolly bodies, Heinz bodies, Pappenheimer bodies, parasites, basophilic stippling, hemoglobin H inclusions. All this can interfere in the reticulocyte count and can give inaccurate results, particularly in anemias. So cellular interferences can be there in terms of cellular fragments, giant platelets, platelet red cell interaction, presence of too many nucleated RBCs, platelet clumps, sometimes autofluorescence in terms of certain drugs like anthracyclines for 5 years can give rise to interference in the inaccuracies of reticulocyte counting. So absolute retic count is also a function of the machine. It is automatically done. And increased retic counts, you know, that in hemolytic anemia, hemorrhagic disorders, pregnancy, response to hematinic treatment, hypoxic situations, where you can have increased retic count, and decreased retic count you will see in nutritional anemias, aplastic anemias, infiltrative disorders of the bone marrow, and after radiation treatment. So these are all very basic things that everyone knows. But what I want to highlight is this immature retic fraction. I have already spoken in my previous slides, but this slide will summarize that. The IRF can be defined as the ratio of young immature reticulocytes to the total number of reticulocytes. It is calculated in the machine, and it has a normal reference value in males and females. And once you feed it, the machine will give you a flag if there is any abnormality in the IRF. Immature retic fraction can be high, medium, and low. I have mentioned about the fluorescence intensity. They, based on this intensity of fluorescence, you can have immature reticulocytes either of high type, medium type, or low fluorescence. And this retic events, which are estimated in channel 3 to 10, is actually calculated out of all retic events. So that gives the IRF. So this is the RBC, the low, the medium, and the high fraction of reticulocyte. This is most immature, this is the most mature, and then it becomes RBC. And this is how this scatter plot will detect in a fluorescence channel for retic mode. So clinical utility of IRF, I need not overemphasize. It can predict hematologic recovery following chemo. It can monitor patients after recombinant erythropoietin when you give it for either iron or after iron therapy in patients of anemia of renal disease, or whenever there is any erythropoietin deficiency. And there are also potential use in the diagnosis of anemia, particularly the aplastic anemias or the hyperproliferative type of anemias, where there is ineffective erythropoiesis, or because of florid hemolytic disease, where the IRF can be markedly high or low. And when you talk about stem cell transplantation, it is one of the early markers of CD34 mobilization for peripheral blood stem cell harvesting. Some of the centers, they use it, but it is not an absolute indication for performing the mobilization and cannot be replaced for CD34 enumeration pre-harvest. So monitoring bone marrow recovery following transplant need not be overemphasized. Every center, they look for these parameters following the transplant, and anybody's window period is about 12 to 18 days in which people expect that everything should go up. The hemoglobin should rise, the WBC should rise, neutrophils should recover, and there should be platelet recovery. So reticulocyte mean volume is also very important. So it gives the MRV, the mean reticulocyte volume. All these are parameters which are actually giving important information in an algorithmic manner. And different cell counters have different algorithmic ways of calculation, like you have Abbott counters, you have Sysmex, you have Beckman Coulter, and you will have different algorithms based on the technique by which the counting happens. So clinical significance of MRV, I did not highlight. All of you know that iron deficiency in thalassemia decreases, and in macrocytic anemia, the MRV is high. Now, an important parameter that is coming into the blood cell counters are the mean cell hemoglobin in reticulocyte. So retic hemoglobin is very important in the treatment of anemia of chronic disease. I'll come to that in the next slide. It is expressed in picograms per cell, and it is a measurement of the hemoglobin content of the reticulocytes. So when it is less than 28 picograms per cell, it predicts the absence of bone marrow iron stores. It is a better negative predictive value. It has better negative predictive value than the MCV and serum ferritin and transferrin saturation. So it is a reliable and early indicator of bone marrow iron status and detects the functional iron deficiency with more sensitivity than biochemical parameters. So ACD, the anemia of chronic disease, it better characterized if you estimate the retic per cell hemoglobin. So I will not go into the details, save time. Red blood cell size is also important, which is nothing but the mean spheroidal volume, particularly if you have large number of spherocytes in the blood. And you can look at this mean spheroidal cell volume, which will give you a better predictor of detection of hereditary spherocytosis than large number of indexes that you have to predict the hereditary spherocytosis. So from retics, I move on to the immature platelet fraction, because these are the two things, the IRF and the IPF, which are predominantly used by physicians and clinicians in this time when there is a lot of dengue patients and patients who are grossly anemic and under treatment. So the newly released platelets are much more larger. They are more reactive than mature platelets, and they are having more concentration of RNA in the platelets. So platelet RNA content correlates directly with megakaryocytic activity. So if the bone marrow is responding to treatment, so it will have more immature platelet fraction. When the patients, they do recover from thrombocytopenia, the IPF increases. Same thing happens in dengue hemorrhagic fever. So you can estimate the immature platelet fraction either by automated blood cell counters, which are the current generation, or by flow cytometry using the thiazole orange, which is a fluorescent dye for staining the platelets. And these stained cells are then passed through a semiconductor diode, as it happens in most of the cell counters. Mature platelets will appear as blue dots, and the green dots will represent immature platelet fraction with increased cell volume and higher fluorescence intensity. So you have two ways how you measure the platelet number. Either you have the impedance method as you follow in the Beckman Coulter counters. Predominantly, the platelet counting is by impedance in most counters, but certain counters also will have the optical platelet. The advantage of having optical platelet in a single platform is there because many times the impedance platelet, there is undercounting in thrombocytopenic situations, which is avoided by the optical platelet count, which is called platelet I and platelet O. So low platelet and low IPF, either is no production and you should transfuse platelets. And when you have low platelet and high IPF, so there is production of platelets, so do not transfuse. So it gives you an indication of the transfusion assessment of single donor platelets or the random donor platelets. So mean platelet volume is also an indicator of the platelet regeneration, just like the mean reticulocyte volume. Platelet distribution width is also important because that gives you the platelet anisocytosis. So there are situations, particularly in cases of myeloproliferative disorders, the platelet distribution width is very broad. In patients of myelodysplasia, you can have a very high PDW. So MPV and PDW will increase during platelet activation, and PDW is a more specific marker for platelet activation than any other parameter. And PLCR, which is there in many counters, platelet to large cell ratio, is the number of cells falling above 12 femtoliters. That is the threshold where there is a discrimination between the large platelets and the small RBCs. So that's very important to correctly count the platelets. So here you can see that. So you have the platelet, which is starting from 2 femtoliters. And then you have the PDW, which is at the center, the mean value. And then you have the PLCR, where there is a little overlap here between the smaller RBCs and larger platelets. And you can set this lower discriminator and higher discriminator depending on the type of population you have. In Calcutta, you have something called constitutional macrothrombocytopenia in Bengalis. So many of these people will have very large platelets. So their PDW will be high. And many of them will not be counted because they are counted by the lower discriminator of RBCs. So when they come up for donating platelets by the FRSS technique, many of them become unfit because the platelet quantity is lower than 1 lakh. So the call will come from the blood bank, please see the manual platelet count. So we see it and correct it. And when we correct it beyond 1 lakh, they become fit to donate single donor platelets. So an inverse relationship normally exists between the mean platelet volume and the platelet count, because more the volume, it is more immature, and that shows that there is a recovering trend of the thrombocytopenic situation, whether it is due to dengue or due to hyperproliferative aplastic anemia or due to treatment response following either ATG-ALD or to any of those romiplastin or platelet agonists or TPO agonists. So this is one thing which every clinician should be familiar with, that when you look at the counter printout, you have flags, you have codes, and you have messages. So a smart clinician should be familiar with these 3 things. What are the flags that he is going to encounter? What are the codes that he may see in the counter printout? Or the messages that are there in the printout, so that the CBC and the differential counting becomes more refined and his understanding becomes better. So this is a busy slide. I'm not going to go into the details of the flags and the positions. So all that this slide conveys is that there are a large number of abbreviated letters that are next to the value, which tells you whether it is low, high, or there is critical, low critical, high critical, things like that. So it will be there in the printout. Similarly, you'll have codes. You'll have different codes which will appear in places of results when the system cannot generate results. Sometimes when the WBC count is very low, it will not count the WBCs. It will give a code. So because there are not enough events for counting, particularly following your conditioning, you may find just before transplantation, your WBC is almost 100 or lower than that. So it will not count it because the sensitivity or the lower limit of detection of WBCs in most counters are 100 and above, not 100 and lower. So the messages that will give rise to suspects, system, and definitive. based on the results that are related to. And there are certain demographic or status results like exception and system status. So these are the things that will come. Suspect messages will be generated by an internal algorithm to convey that a clinical condition may exist with a specimen based on an abnormal cell population. System messages will indicate an event occurrence that may affect the operation of a system. So all these you can appreciate when you start interpreting these suspect flags and system messages. So I'll not go into the details, sorry. Yes, so this is the printout and you can find that where the flags will appear. I have marked them in this red, the flag will appear here, the suspect flag, the system flags will appear here, and exception demographic things will appear there. So you must look at those to look at the exception and the suspect messages. And these are certain suspect messages that you may get in the printout. You may have abnormal hemoglobin, you may have monoblast, you may have lymphoblast, giant platelets, dimorphic RBC. So this is just the names which may appear as suspect messages in the flag area. Sickle cells also appear these days in modern counters, RBC fragments, nucleated red cells. So everything will come in your interpretation in this printout. Similarly, you can have definitive messages where there is significant anisocytosis. It will grade 1+, 2+, 3+. It will grade eosinophilia. It will say it is leukocytosis, neutrophilic leukocytosis. It will tell about immature granulocytes. It will flag macrocytosis into 3 grades. Neutropenia. So everything these days can be flagged in a modern day blood cell counter. So these are the system messages where you have very high event, very low event. So all these are functional characteristics of the platform. These are not the result-oriented messages. They are functional messages, which actually is difficult for a clinician to adopt. But what I have shown, the messages that are abnormalities of the different parameters, not the system messages, they are easier to adopt by clinicians directly. Like bubbles, carryover, they are our lookout. The pathologists will see all these. So CBC parameters, like you have cellular interference, the suspect message will come. If you have dimorphic red cells, you can see that there is dimorphism in the form of this particular histogram. You can have RBC fragments or microcytes. Here, if you have RBC fragments, it will appear here. RBC fragments, microcytes. So immediately your attention will go towards that, and you can color code it, and it will draw your attention. Red cell agglutination, you can see here, this is the red cell agglutination area. Giant platelets, you can see here, there are giant platelets. And these are the giant platelet area. And this is the giant platelet area. So it hasn't come back to the baseline. It is still going on and hasn't come back to the baseline. So the platelet histogram is very important. It is not the clinician. An adept clinician will always see a hematologist. A clinical hematologist can see it, but not a general physician until unless he is primed about it and sees a large number of these in his daily practice. Platelet clumps is very important. You can see how the platelet clumps haven't, it's not a best fitted curve. It hasn't come back to the baseline in a very smooth manner. So it is clumps. It's shown. This is the platelet clump area. So the cell counters are becoming smarter and smarter day by day. And it is going to give you a lot of information in that single page that you take a printout of in a blood cell count. Hemoglobin interference with WBCs. MCV interference in platelets. The large platelets and small RBCs will interfere. MCV interference with WBCs. So finally, you get the abnormal cell distribution. This is the normal scatter plot. And based on this, you can find out that there are these abnormalities in them. I'll just rush through because I think I'm running short of time. So you can find lymphoblasts here. Okay. So from this scatter plot, you can make out that this is a normal scatter and these are abnormal scatter. So these are all lymphoblasts. Similarly, monoblasts. You can find these are monoblasts. This is monocyte. So you have to know the normal area as to where the normal cell forms. That will come to you naturally as you see more and more of these scatter plots. Immature granulocytes, very important in infections. You'll find large number of immature granulocytes. Shift to the left is easily discernible when you see these scatter plot. This is a 2D scatter plot, and these days the cell counters have got 3-dimensional scatter plots. Very easy to detect abnormal populations. Variant lymphocytes, like in infections, in viral infections, in dengue, in COVID, you can have large number of variant lymphocytes. Abnormal differential patterns can be identified much easier by the R flag. The neutrophil eosinophilic overlap, you see, there's no overlap here. You see there is eosinophil and neutrophilic overlaps, which can be picked up easily in the counter. Low events, not enough events available for differential. I just mentioned severe leukopenia. You don't have any neutrophils. Neutrophil count is less than 100. So all these will gradually be replaced by this. This slide is reviewing and verifying through a digital platform, large number of them, and it has annotated, and all that the observers are seeing are annotated images, which hasn't been identified as normal cells, and you are seeing them much easier because it captures it and produces in the form of a screen, and you just see it and sign off. So I have finished this presentation. This is the slide from Eastern Ladakh, where you are now eyeball to eyeball with the Chinese. But look at their morale. The temperature is minus 40 degrees, but still they're smiling. And you are smiling in Ahmedabad because of these bunch of people who are your brave soldiers who are guarding you all the time. You see the icy heights behind, nothing but snow. Not a blade of grass grows there, but we are holding on to the ground. That's the sovereignty of this country. With that, I thank everybody for this patient hearing. And in case there are any questions, I would be happy to take a couple of them. Thank you very much. And I thank Sanket and Sandeep and Parimal to have organized this and invited me to just give you a brief overview of what modern day cell counters are capable of doing and how the clinicians, without the pathologist's help, can interpret these nuances of blood cell counting there itself in their clinics and can start treating patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak Mishra. I think with these modern cell counters, the reports are becoming more and more objective, and the subjectivity is gradually decreasing. But I think still it cannot replace good pathologists behind the microscope who can see the peripheral smear and I think answer most of the questions by seeing a good peripheral smear examination. If there are any questions from...
The idea of this lecture was not to replace them, but to make the clinicians more aware and familiar with the modern blood cell counters, that how they can effectively use these counters in their...
How much this counter, which so gives all these parameters, must be costing right now?
They are decreasing in the price. It will be about 30 to 40 lakhs.
So I think most of the routine laboratories, I think they cannot have this such sophisticated cell counters.
You see, these are all 5-part, 7-part differential counters. So these days, Ahmedabad is a rich city. So
Some labs are having this.
yes,
But I think,
and many clinicians, they have these counters these days.
but I think most important thing is for the physician is to ask pathologists if you
No,
know.
you see,
They have to
definitely
ask.
you can't always replace them, but certainly in routine things, it is much easier to interpret that printout than to wait for one day so that the peripheral smear report comes. So if you are seeing the flags and you are smart enough to understand the flaggings, so you can start treating the patient straight away and wait for the pathologist report subsequently.
Parimal, do you have any comments or question?
I have one question, sir, regarding this quality control.
Yes.
Say that for internal quality control, now whether we have to use the machinery control, manufacturer control, or we have to use the third party control.
If you see the new guideline of NABL, previously they used to recommend third party controls. You cannot use the same manufacturer's internal control, but now they have done away with it. It is either the same company's internal control or third party control, both will do. And all the parameters. Yes.
Because sir, there is sometimes discrepancy comes that manufacturer controls are within the range, but the third party control are outside the range. So then in that discrepancy, how do we have to go to take the corrective action?
No, but then you must be a rich lab to have two different internal controls. But I think if they are stable, because normally the open vial stability of these are 2 weeks. So the moment you open an internal control vial, you have to use it within 14 days. So if you use it beyond 14 days, the results will be ready. So we have checked with Randox and the Beckman-Coulter controls. We use Biorad also as an external EQUAS. We haven't found such dramatic deviations from the result.
We have found some discrepancy with the Biorad controls. The Biorad controls are outside, but the Sysmex controls are within.
Yes, it sometimes does give. Like our retic control lower values were beyond range. So yes, sometimes they are there.
And sir, the another problem.
Sorry to disturb, Parimal. There is one question from Dr. Jitendra Kumar. The question is characteristics in CBC in viral infection like dengue, COVID, etc. So
yes. So the thing is that the CBC will flag atypical lymphocytes. You see, the flagging area will give atypical lymphocytes, and you will examine the peripheral blood and you will find atypical lymphocytes, activated lymphocytes, the so-called virocytes. It is seen. And the counters they give, they flag atypical lymphocytes. We have seen many COVID patients admitted in our hospital, COVID with cancer. We have found atypical lymphocytes in many of these printouts.
I think is there any other question? Let me see. No, that is the only question. So thank you. I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much for an excellent talk on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Today, I think Sanket had some emergency.
Okay. So I am not seeing Sanket in the audience.
Yeah.
So convey my thanks to him as well, because he is the one who organized this talk.
Yes.
And so in the typical Gujarati language, I know only Khemcho.
Balo hai.
Balo means Bengali mein well.
Well, yeah, that is what I'm telling you. Balo.
Very nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.